The universe drifts through an aging twilight, and we find ourselves suspended within a moment that feels deceptively bright, as if creation were still young and brimming with promise, even though its deeper clock ticks toward exhaustion. Stars that once ignited with violent brilliance now burn more slowly, whispering the first hints of fatigue, and galaxies that once clung together through gravitational devotion steadily loosen their embrace. In this vast and quiet drift, a strange realization emerges. We are living inside a temporary glow, a fleeting shimmer in a cosmic story that leans toward darkness. Here, a subtle unease begins to form, for the brilliance we take for granted may already be the universe's final flare. Across the great cosmic expanse, hydrogen, the simplest and most ancient fuel of stars, grows scarcer with each passing epoch, and every star that forms marks one fewer waiting to be born. The night sky remains full of luminous companions, yet each of those lights represents a debt being paid, an energy account slowly approaching zero. And this is where the story bends, because while our ancestral myths celebrated fire as the symbol of life, the universe treats fire as an expensive luxury, destined to fade into a colder, quieter equilibrium. Perhaps we are witnessing the last era in which the cosmos feels warm enough for consciousness to bloom freely. As galaxies drift farther apart, carried by an accelerating expansion that no known force can restrain, the distances between islands of light stretch beyond the hope of future communion. Civilizations that might arise in distant realms will inherit an ever-emptier sky, a cosmic map with missing landmarks, a silence growing louder with time. Yet the truth may be stranger, for some physicists argue that intelligence might be uniquely favored during this brief period when stars still burn and entropy has not yet reduced all complexity to ash. If so, the window for minds like ours is both precious and precariously narrow. Ancient philosophers, gazing upward from desert nights and temple roofs, sensed a fragility long before science would name it. They spoke of the world as a fading ember, a temporary bridge suspended between cycles of creation and dissolution. Today, astrophysics echoes their intuition with equations instead of hymns, yet the emotional weight remains the same. The cosmos is not eternal in its radiance. Light, in every form, has a lifespan. And here a question emerges. What does it mean to awaken in a universe already halfway into its decline? Perhaps the greater question is why this age appears suspiciously suited for observers like us. Some theories suggest that consciousness could not have arisen earlier, when the universe was too hot and chaotic, nor later, when it will be too cold and simple. We stand at a cosmic midpoint, balanced between fire and frost, as if nature required this exact softness of conditions to contemplate itself. Yet the deeper problem lingers. Midpoints do not last, and equilibrium is only a pause in a far longer descent. As the last giant stars continue their slow surrender, and black holes prepare for the ages in which they will dominate the cosmic landscape, one cannot escape the eerie sense that we have arrived at an exquisitely timed moment, late enough to observe the universe's grand architecture, but early enough to witness its light before it truly falters. The symmetry feels almost unsettling, as though intelligence appears only during the last usable chapters of stellar energy. And so we begin with a quiet but haunting possibility. What if we are not early explorers of a radiant cosmos, but the final witnesses to its fading glow? What if this bright age is not the norm, but the exception? And what if intelligence, rare and delicate, is destined to arise only at the edge of cosmic night, just before darkness claims everything? The universe has lived many lives, yet only a sliver of its vast timeline has been gentle enough to permit the delicate architecture of chemistry, biology, memory, and thought. Before this golden age, reality was dominated by a violent radiance that erased complexity the moment it tried to form. In those early epochs, temperatures were so extreme that atoms could not hold themselves together, and space churned with newborn turbulence. The first stars had not yet kindled. The elements needed for planets and oceans did not exist. Even time itself felt too young to host the quiet patience life requires. But there is a deeper problem. For this chaos did not simply give way to calm. It passed through a miraculous interval in which conditions softened just enough for creation to experiment with structure. Only after hundreds of millions of years did the darkness of the cosmic night begin to fracture with the first fragile flames of starlight. These early giants lived fast and died violently, forging the heavier elements that would one day become soil, breath, and blood. Yet the truth may be stranger, because this transformation did not unfold gradually, but in sudden leaps, as if the universe were testing the possibility of complexity in brief, brilliant attempts. And here a question emerges. Why did this transition occur at all, and why within such a narrow temperate range between inferno and freeze? Perhaps the cosmos needed to cool to a precise threshold before stability could triumph. Or perhaps intelligence requires not just stars, but stars that have already lived and died. The universe had to age, had to recycle itself, had to outgrow its earliest violence before minds could be shaped from its remnants. But if the early universe was too hot, the far future is destined to be too cold. The expansion that now separates galaxies with gentle silence will one day hurl them beyond each other's reach. Stars will dwindle, growing red and faint, their embers stretching into trillions of years before collapsing into ash. In that distant winter, even molecules may become luxuries, and whatever forms of life still cling to existence will inhabit a universe increasingly indifferent to complexity. Here the story bends again, revealing a disturbing symmetry. Consciousness depends on a cosmos warm enough to feed it, yet stable enough to nurture its fragile architectures. It appears only after countless stars have burned, but before the darkness becomes permanent. Intelligence is neither a beginning nor an ending, but a brief illumination between two infinities of silence. Scientists call this interval the habitable era of the universe, not for planets, but for thought itself. It may last only a fraction of the cosmos's total lifespan, a flicker compared to the endless ages that came before and will follow. And yet we exist precisely in that luminous middle, when matter is rich, when energy flows freely, when the universe is old enough to remember its own violence, but young enough to resist the exhaustion approaching its horizon. Perhaps it is coincidence. Or maybe the emergence of intelligence is time-sensitive, reliant on a cosmos still vibrant with dying stars, whose ashes feed the possibility of life. Yet another thought shadows this one. Could it be that the universe required billions of experiments, across billions of galaxies, across billions of years, to produce minds at all? As this rare window narrows with every passing epoch, one final question lingers at its edge. Has this golden age welcomed countless civilizations before us, rising and vanishing in the same brief light? Or are we the first and only consciousness the universe managed to create before the night returns? The story of intelligence begins not with brilliance, but with improbability, an almost unreasonable sequence of accidents stretching across billions of years. On Earth, it took 4.5 billion years for consciousness to emerge, and even here, on this single fertile world, its appearance was neither guaranteed nor particularly swift. Life lingered as simple cells for eons, as if reluctant to attempt anything more complicated than survival. Multicellularity required a rare atmospheric shift. Complex nervous systems demanded oxygen levels that rose only once. And the leap from instinct to thought required evolutionary gambles so unlikely that even slight changes in ancient oceans might have prevented them. Here a quiet truth begins to surface. Intelligence may not be a natural outcome of biology, but a fragile detour that almost never occurs. When we expand this reflection to the wider cosmos, the silence becomes deafening. The Fermi paradox asks why, in a universe filled with stars and planets, we find no echoes of other minds. Perhaps the deeper problem is not communication, but absence. If the chain of coincidences that led to human thought is representative of cosmic history, then the universe may produce stars easily, planets occasionally, life rarely, and intelligence almost never. Yet the truth may be stranger, because even if intelligence arises, it may vanish quickly, erased by its own tools, its unstable climates, or the indifference of cosmic events. The Great Filter theory suggests that somewhere in the progression from chemistry to civilization lies a nearly impassable barrier, a step so unlikely or so dangerous that almost nothing crosses it. Whether that barrier lies behind us or ahead remains a terrifying uncertainty. And here a question emerges. Why did the universe wait 13.8 billion years to generate minds capable of contemplating it? Perhaps the materials needed for intelligence, carbon, nitrogen, phosphorus, metals forged in stellar deaths, required billions of years of cosmic recycling. Early stars could not produce the chemical richness needed for life. Only after multiple generations of stellar births and supernova endings did the universe accumulate the ingredients for complexity. Intelligence may therefore be a consequence of cosmic aging, a phenomenon that can arise only once the universe has matured beyond its violent youth. Yet the story bends again, for if intelligence depends on heavy elements and stable planetary environments, then it also depends on a narrow window before stars fade and future galaxies drift beyond reach. But the rarity of intelligence may not end with its emergence, it may extend into its survival. Civilizations could blink into existence only to be extinguished in cosmic moments, destroyed by astrophysical events, internal conflict, environmental collapse, or the slow tightening of entropy. If intelligence tends to self-destruct or simply cannot endure the evolving conditions of its universe, then the scattered sparks that do appear might be brief and lonely. Here the dread deepens, for the universe's silence could be the result of civilizations that arrived too late or lasted too little. We might be witnessing not a vacant cosmos, but a graveyard of unrealized potential. This leads inevitably to a darker reflection. What if intelligence is not the beginning of a cosmic story, but the end of one? A late phenomenon, arising only when the universe has grown old enough to permit reflective minds, yet still warm enough to sustain them. If so, consciousness might be the universe's final experiment, a whisper that emerges just before the lights dim. Perhaps intelligence is not the engine of cosmic destiny, but the closing remark in a narrative driven by stars, matter, and time. And if that is true, then our existence hints at a nearing horizon, the possibility that few, if any, will come after us. In the widening darkness of cosmic history, one unsettling possibility remains. We may not be the norm, but the exception, the rare anomaly produced by countless failed attempts across endless space. Minds like ours may appear only during the universe's brief golden age, forming not at its dawn, but near its dusk. And so the fear that lingers at the edge of this mystery is simple and profound. What if intelligence is the universe's last fragile flame, and we are its final flicker? The deep future unfolds not with drama, but with an almost unbearable slowness, as though time itself were growing tired of movement. Long after the familiar constellations have reshaped themselves beyond recognition, long after the last red dwarfs burn through their modest reserves, the cosmos enters an age where starlight becomes a rumor rather than a reality. What remains is a thinning ocean of fading embers, each star meeting its quiet end, leaving behind only the cold residue of what once pulsed with radiant fire. And here the story bends, for when the final stars extinguish themselves, the universe loses not just its light, but its capacity to forge new complexity. The cosmic furnace closes, and with it, the chapter in which life could meaningfully arise. In this dimming landscape, even the most resilient structures face an inevitable unraveling. White dwarfs slowly cool into black, silent monuments. Neutron stars drift without witness, and black holes become the last great engines of gravity in a universe already slipping toward exhaustion. Yet the truth may be stranger, because even black holes are temporary, destined to evaporate through Hawking radiation, releasing their mass into a trickle of faint particles over unimaginable spans of time. As they shrink and fade, the universe loses its final reservoirs of concentrated energy, surrendering the last shadows of its once luminous age. Here a deeper problem emerges. When the most powerful objects in existence can no longer endure, what hope remains for anything as delicate as thought? As entropy marches forward, The universe expands into an ever colder void, scattering particles so thinly that interaction becomes rare and eventually impossible. The second law of thermodynamics ensures that disorder triumphs, and with it comes the dissolution of structure, pattern, and information. In the far reaches of this timeline, the cosmos approaches what physicists call heat death, a state not of fire, but of perfect uniformity, where no gradients remain to drive motion or meaning. Perhaps this is the ultimate silence, a condition where even the idea of contrast loses coherence. Without difference, without energy, without tension, the universe becomes a smooth, dark canvas incapable of supporting memory. Proton decay, if it occurs, adds another layer of erasure. Matter itself may slowly disintegrate, causing atoms to unravel into simpler particles that drift through an expanding geometry detached from purpose. Every molecule that once contributed to a living organism, every fragment of a star, every remnant of a civilization becomes subject to an invisible countdown, as though the universe were reclaiming all the forms it once allowed. And even this dissolution is gentle compared to the final epochs, when particles become so sparse that collisions cease entirely, creating a cosmos where nothing can happen because nothing remains to change. And here a question emerges. Can intelligence exist in a universe where energy itself is unreachable? Thought requires gradients, differences, flows of heat and information, yet the far future promises none of these. Even if some unimaginable form of life attempts to adapt, it will face the same relentless arithmetic. Entropy increases, energy diffuses, and eventually no mechanism for computation or consciousness can be sustained. The universe becomes not just inhospitable, but fundamentally incompatible with the very idea of awareness. Intelligence, once a brief spark amid cosmic abundance, becomes physically impossible. As the last black hole evaporates, releasing a final whisper of radiation into a near-perfect void, the universe transitions into an age without events, without change, without witnesses. What remains is an expanding darkness filled with particles so widely separated that light itself cannot bridge the distances between them. And here the narrative contracts into a chilling simplicity. All structures die, all memories dissolve, all stories end. The cosmos enters a form of eternal night not defined by shadows, but by the absence of anything that could cast them. In this absolute stillness, one haunting question lingers at the edge of imagination. When the universe reaches its final state, who will remain to remember that anything ever happened at all? Intelligence, once awakened, carries within it an instinctive refusal to simply fade. As the universe moves toward its long decline, the question arises whether thought can bend the trajectory of cosmic fate, or whether even the greatest minds remain bound by the same thermodynamic constraints that govern stars and galaxies. Here the story shifts into a realm where imagination meets physics, exploring whether advanced civilizations might attempt to outrun entropy through ingenuity, adaptation, or profound manipulation of the universe's deepest machinery. Yet the truth may be stranger, for every possibility comes shadowed by a reminder that the cosmos, vast and patient, has vanquished greater structures than any form of life. Some theorists imagine supercivilizations capable of reshaping their surroundings with staggering precision. Dyson spheres could harvest the full energy output of stars, turning scattered starlight into a concentrated reservoir of survival. Others propose tapping into black holes, using their accretion disks or Hawking radiation as engines capable of sustaining thought for epochs far beyond the stellar era. Perhaps minds could migrate inward, living on the last currents of gravitational power as the universe cools around them. Yet a deeper problem emerges. Even the most efficient machines ultimately face diminishing returns, for every act of computation adds entropy, and every attempt to preserve memory leaves a residue of disorder that cannot be undone. More audacious ideas suggest that intelligence might attempt to manipulate space-time itself. Some speculate about the engineering of wormholes, openings that could act as bridges to regions of higher energy or even to entirely new cosmic domains. If such pathways exist, minds might escape into a younger universe, one still rich with starlight and structure. And here a question emerges. Could consciousness become a cosmic migrant, seeking refuge in a freshly born cosmos before its own grows cold? Or might intelligence discover how to trigger the birth of a new universe, seeding it with the potential for both energy and awareness? In these visions, intelligence becomes not a passive observer, but an architect, shaping reality with tools that verge on myth. Yet the story bends again, confronting the relentless presence of entropy. No matter how advanced a civilization becomes, it must still operate within the constraints of physics, and the second law casts a long shadow over every dream of immortality. Machines degrade, systems lose coherence, and information erodes. Even if minds convert themselves into more stable substrates, or encode their thoughts into patterns of matter designed for endurance, the surrounding universe continues its march toward uniformity. There is a quiet terror in recognizing that the enemy may not be destruction, but dissolution, a gradual thinning of possibility until no structure remains robust enough to support awareness. Still, hope lingers in unexpected places. Some theorists argue that intelligence might uncover loopholes in physics, hidden symmetries, or undiscovered principles that allow entropy to be diverted, reversed, or locally suspended. Others imagine minds so transformed that they no longer rely on familiar forms of energy, existing instead as abstract processes woven into the very geometry of space-time. Perhaps intelligence could step outside the normal flow of cosmic aging, inhabiting stable mathematical structures that outlast matter itself. Or perhaps consciousness becomes an engine of renewal, initiating cycles of creation that ensure its continuation across successive universes. And so the tension deepens. Is the universe fundamentally hostile to long-term thought, condemning all minds to eventual silence? Or is intelligence the only force capable of challenging the cosmic drift toward darkness? The future offers no answers, only possibilities suspended between doom and defiance. What remains is a single haunting uncertainty, whether thought is destined to be extinguished by the universe, or whether thought itself is the universe's final attempt to escape its own fate. The universe carries a strange and unsettling quiet, a silence so complete that it feels less like an absence and more like the residue of something long vanished. As we search the sky for hints of others, ancient signals, engineered stars, abandoned megastructures, we find nothing but an undisturbed expanse. Yet the truth may be stranger, for this emptiness does not prove that others were never here. It may simply mean that whatever once existed has already dissolved into the background of cosmic time. Here a question emerges. What if intelligence has risen before, struggled against the same forces we now contemplate, and ultimately succumbed to them? Consider the vast stretches of cosmic history that unfolded before our world even cooled. Stars lived and died billions of years before Earth formed, creating heavy elements that now circulate in our blood. Entire galaxies completed their first cycles of evolution long before life stirred in our oceans. If intelligence were to arise somewhere else, it could have done so countless ages before us, in epochs so remote that their traces would have eroded completely. Civilizations may have risen under ancient suns, built wonders beyond our imagination, and faded before our planet even existed. Yet the deeper problem is that time is a merciless eraser, and across billions of years, even the greatest achievements could vanish without leaving a single atom arranged in deliberate form. The Fermi paradox, rather than simply asking where everyone is, becomes a darker meditation on impermanence. If intelligent species appeared early, they faced a universe still young, chaotic, and unstable, filled with violent star births and destructive radiation. Perhaps they emerged too soon, in eras when even advanced technology could not protect them from cosmic forces vastly stronger than their ingenuity. Or perhaps the opposite is true. Maybe they arose later, but not late enough to avoid the growing scarcity of energy that accompanies an aging universe. In either case, the silence around us may be the echo of civilizations trapped between cosmic conditions they could not overcome. Some argue that intelligent beings might destroy themselves before reaching a stage where they can reshape their destiny. Others propose that entropy imposes a universal filter, ensuring that complexity, biological or technological, cannot persist indefinitely. Even the most advanced societies may face internal limits, resource depletion, ecological collapse, or the simple mathematical impossibility of sustaining information in a world that trends toward disorder. And here the story bends, for the great silence may be less a mystery than a warning, a hint that the universe does not nurture intelligence gently, and that every spark of awareness is precariously balanced against forces seeking to extinguish it. Yet another possibility rises from the quiet. Perhaps intelligence is not merely rare, but extraordinarily fragile in time. Even if civilizations flourish briefly, their visible signatures may decay long before another species reaches the capability to detect them. Megastructures could be dismantled by gravity, radiation, or stellar evolution. Signals might disperse into noise. Artifacts could be swallowed by cosmic expansion. A universe billions of years old provides more than enough time for entire histories to vanish without leaving a trace. The darkness around us may therefore represent not an empty cosmos, but a cosmic afterlife, a place where the living find only the shadows of the long dead. And this leads to the most haunting possibility of all. Maybe we arrived at a uniquely balanced moment, late enough to observe the universe clearly, yet early enough to still find it illuminated. If intelligence arose too soon, it lived in a harsher cosmos. If it appears too late, it awakens in a dying one. We inhabit the narrow middle, a fleeting era in which the universe still glows. The silence that surrounds us may not be proof of solitude, but a reminder that others came at the wrong time, too early to endure or too late to matter, and that we might be the final witnesses of a cosmos slowly surrendering to its own night. We find ourselves suspended in a moment that feels impossibly poised, as though the universe has opened its eyes just long enough to become aware of its own fading light. This strange alignment forces us into the heart of a profound dilemma. Are we here because this is the only era in which consciousness can exist, or because we are an unlikely accident drifting through a cosmos largely indifferent to our presence? The anthropic principle suggests that observers can only appear in universes, and at times, compatible with observation. Yet the truth may be stranger, for this explanation offers no comfort. It merely states that we exist because otherwise we would not. And here a question emerges. Does this necessity grant meaning, or does it reveal how fragile our significance truly is? The Copernican principle tells us we are not special, not placed at the center, not marked by any cosmic intention. According to this view, our emergence is nothing more than a statistical inevitability given enough stars, planets, and time. But the deeper problem surfaces when we consider how narrow the conditions for consciousness appear to be, how finely tuned the universe must remain to allow even a single mind to form. Are we simply the result of an improbable chain of coincidences, or does the universe permit minds only during a brief window that itself carries a kind of eerie purpose? The tension between these interpretations grows heavier the more we reflect on our timing, as if the universe is whispering a riddle we cannot decipher. The rare Earth hypothesis argues that complex life requires a perfect balance of planetary, chemical, geological, and astrophysical circumstances, conditions so precise that the emergence of intelligence might be nearly impossible elsewhere. If so, we are not chosen but fortunate, beneficiaries of a cosmic lottery with odds so extreme that our very existence feels surreal. Yet this idea deepens the loneliness of the universe, implying that consciousness might be a single spark in a nearly endless dark. And the story bends again when we consider simulation theory, which proposes that our reality might be constructed or curated, perhaps to explore the final chapters of cosmic evolution, or to preserve a fragment of awareness as the larger universe cools. But if such a framework exists, it raises the same haunting question: why now? Fine-tuning pushes this reflection even further. The universe's fundamental constants appear exquisitely balanced to permit stars, chemistry, and eventually minds. Some claim this balance is merely chance, while others imagine a multiverse in which countless realities exist, and we inhabit the one where awareness is possible. But perhaps the deeper question is not why the universe is fine-tuned for life, but why life emerges precisely when the tuning begins to falter. Consciousness may not be a beginning. It may be an epilogue, the universe waking briefly to witness its own decline before entropy claims everything. Here the emotional weight gathers, pulling us toward an ancient fear. What if our existence carries no significance beyond survival? What if intelligence is merely a byproduct of chemical restlessness, arising now only because this moment offers the last remnants of usable energy? Yet the opposite possibility is equally haunting, that we are here not by chance, but because the universe requires someone to observe its long descent into silence. Perhaps consciousness is the cosmos reflecting on itself, acknowledging its own impermanence in the only way it can. Or perhaps we are the final sparks before darkness, appearing too late to shape the universe, yet just in time to remember it. And so we stand between two equally overwhelming interpretations. Either we are meaningless accidents in a vast, indifferent expanse, or we are profoundly significant witnesses to the universe's final chapters. In this uncertain tension, one question lingers with quiet insistence. Are we chosen by timing, or are we simply the last mind the universe will ever know? When the last mind fades, the universe continues, but in a way that feels strangely hollow, as though something essential has slipped quietly out of existence. Without observers, the cosmos drifts forward in perfect indifference, its galaxies rotating in silence, its stars burning through their fuel with no one left to name their light. Here a question emerges. What becomes of reality when nothing remains that can reflect upon it? The beauty of the cosmic tapestry, once filtered through the lens of consciousness, becomes a cold procession of events marching toward entropy, stripped of interpretation, memory, or meaning. In the ages after humanity, no new civilizations rise to inherit the sky. The conditions that once nurtured life become rarer, and then impossible. Worlds cool, atmospheres thin, and the intricate balance required for thought dissolves into background noise. Perhaps intelligence was a brief anomaly in a much larger story governed not by wonder, but by physics alone. And yet the truth may be stranger, because the absence of witnesses transforms the universe into something fundamentally different. Without minds to observe the dance of galaxies, the unfolding of time becomes a purely mechanical gesture, elegant but unattended. As entropy deepens, the structures we once admired begin their slow surrender. Stars dim into embers, nebulae disperse into atomic dust, and planets wander through widening darkness with no awareness of their own trajectories. The cosmic architecture that once inspired awe continues to exist, but only as a blind system, moving from order to disorder without understanding or memory. And here the story bends, for the universe without consciousness becomes a stage without actors, a narrative without readers, a symphony performed for an empty hall. Philosophers have long debated whether reality requires an observer to be complete. Some interpretations of quantum theory suggest that observation shapes outcomes, that measurement carves definite states out of drifting probabilities. If so, the disappearance of observers marks a quiet transformation in the nature of existence itself. In a universe devoid of minds, events unfold without being witnessed, choices collapse without awareness, and the boundary between possibility and reality becomes a matter of pure physical process. Yet the deeper problem lingers. Does meaning survive when meaning makers do not? From an existential perspective, intelligence once served as the universe's means of recognizing itself, however briefly. Minds illuminated not just planets and stars, but the very concept of existence, turning matter into memory and time into story. Without them, the cosmos becomes a vast, unexamined expanse, still beautiful in form, but empty of interpretation. Perhaps this is the ultimate silence, a state not only without sound, but without thought, without curiosity, without even the faintest echo of the beings that once asked what it all meant. And so we are left with a haunting possibility. Intelligence might not have been a random spark, but the universe experiencing itself before the darkness closed in. If consciousness was the cosmos's brief awakening, then the ages that follow our disappearance mark its return to sleep, a dreamless slumber in which nothing observes, remembers, or wonders. In that final quiet, one unresolved question lingers like a fading star. Without witnesses, does the universe remain complete, or does it become a blind machine drifting endlessly through the night? Across the long arc of cosmic history, a single truth threads through every epoch. The universe is drifting toward darkness, and we exist during a fleeting moment when light still holds dominion. Stars burn, galaxies breathe, and complexity persists, but only for now. Only during this delicate interlude before entropy asserts its final authority. And here the story bends, because our presence in this luminous era feels almost suspicious, as though intelligence has arrived not at the dawn of creation but at its dwindling twilight. The question that once haunted our species, whether we are alone, begins to transform into something far more unsettling. Perhaps the deeper mystery is not solitude but succession. If countless planets circle countless stars, then minds may have emerged before us, risen, flourished, and vanished long before Earth cooled. Yet the silence surrounding us suggests an even darker possibility, that we are not the first, but the last. Cosmic aging ensures that conditions for intelligence grow increasingly fragile with each passing epoch, and the window that once allowed consciousness to appear is narrowing swiftly. Here a question emerges. Did other civilizations fall to cosmic accidents, internal collapse, or the relentless pull of entropy, leaving us as the final caretakers of awareness? In this precarious moment, we stand at the intersection of scientific inevitability and emotional revelation. The universe is growing colder, stars are exhausting their fuel, the cosmic expansion is accelerating beyond any hope of reversal. And yet, within this fading architecture, we remain profoundly alive, capable of reflection, curiosity, and choice. Perhaps that capacity grants us a strange kind of responsibility. If intelligence is destined to flicker only briefly, then our existence becomes less accidental and more symbolic, a fragile assertion of meaning against the backdrop of universal decay. But the truth may be stranger, for responsibility itself becomes ambiguous when the future darkens. Some may argue that being the last spark carries no inherent purpose, that consciousness is merely the final echo of natural processes winding down. Others feel an opposing pull, the idea that to witness is to matter, that the universe becomes complete only when a mind rises to observe its unfolding. If we truly stand within the final era of light, then our role becomes inseparable from the cosmos's waning vitality. We may be the last beings capable of asking what existence means, the last to feel wonder, fear, or hope. And here the narrative tightens, drawing us toward an inevitable horizon. For the question is no longer whether life exists elsewhere, but whether any consciousness will arise after us in a universe so swiftly dimming. If we occupy the final vantage point before eternal night, then our brief moment becomes both a warning and an invitation. The warning whispers that nothing endures. The invitation suggests that meaning is forged precisely because of impermanence. As the universe drifts toward silence, one haunting uncertainty remains. If consciousness is truly the universe's last flame, then what do we choose to do with the limited light still gathered in our hands? In the end, the universe answers little. After all the equations, the projections, the meditations on entropy and silence, we are left with a truth both quiet and overwhelming. The cosmos may fade without ever revealing why it existed at all. And here a question emerges, softer than the dying light of a distant star. What remains when the search for meaning outlives the universe itself? Perhaps the silence is not a failure to speak, but a boundary we were never meant to cross. As the ages stretch forward, stars will dim, galaxies will drift apart, and the last traces of warmth will dissolve into a cold and endless equilibrium. Yet intelligence, however brief, carries a strange defiance. It questions even as the answers retreat. It illuminates even as the darkness gathers. The truth may be stranger than our fears, for consciousness may not be the conqueror of fate, but its final companion, the flicker that acknowledges the coming night rather than resisting it. In that fragile glow lies something profound. Awareness becomes its own form of meaning. Across the vastness, we have asked whether we are early, late, alone, or last. But perhaps timing is not the measure that matters. Perhaps our purpose was never to survive the entire span of cosmic history, but to stand briefly in its luminous middle and recognize the miracle of existing at all. Intelligence may not escape entropy, yet it transforms the universe simply by noticing it, by turning matter into memory and time into understanding. Here the story bends once more, revealing that even a temporary witness can grant significance to an indifferent expanse. So as the cosmos drifts toward its final horizon, we are left with a quiet inheritance, the ability to wonder, the ability to see beauty in a universe that does not promise it, the ability to ask questions that may never be answered, yet still feel meaningful in the asking. And when the last stars finally fade, when no minds remain to dream or calculate or hope, the echo of those questions may be the closest thing the universe ever had to purpose. In the end, one mystery lingers like a final ember suspended in infinite dark. Are we the last chapter of the cosmic story, or merely one more page before the book closes forever?